my pleasure tonight to introduce Barbara Nicolosi. As David noted, she is a fascinating person. She's spicy. She's full of well thought out opinions. I think that it's good for you to know that she's a screenwriter. She's also, if you look on page 20, there's a brief bio, so we're not going to say a lot. But she writes a media column for the National Catholic Register. She's on the executive committee of the City of Angels Film Festival. She's on the board of Catholics in the Media. And her website is a fascinating read. It's just she's in touch with what's going on in Hollywood. I think she's really as close as anybody that I know to living on that intersection of faith and culture, because she's right there in the middle of where culture's made in Hollywood. So she's one of us. She's there as an observer. She's there as a former of culture, a maker of culture herself. And one thing I noted about Barbara, she speaks out about what she thinks needs to be said, and sometimes that's not popular. And she has this courage and strength of her convictions, and I respect that a great deal. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you now Barbara Nicolosi.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Cal. I think I can put this down, right? I don't need it because I'm all, yeah. I got the Britney Spears thing going on here. I'm so excited, and I'm never excited about anything. I don't know. I've really been looking forward to doing this. So I'm very grateful to be here. And he said Jeremy's talking tomorrow. I think I was nervous for a while because in this assembly of these speakers, I feel very much like the realization of that Sesame Street song. It was Aristotle's categories put to music. One of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong. And so I think tonight we're getting the Children's Television Workshop presentation here. Yeah, right, that's right. This is basically, I am not a theologian. I'm not actually an evangelical. I can consider myself a Catholic evangelical, I suppose, but just to say I don't really swim in this circle. And just to tell you how much I don't, when we drove up to the church here the other day, when we first arrived, I did a double take at the sign, evangelical-free church. I thought, is that like calorie-free? And honestly, I still don't know what it means, but I think it can't mean like calorie-free because they've let a lot of you in here, and what I am is an artist. I'm a writer, screenwriter. I am someone who has produced theater. I work with artists, and basically I've spent the last 10 years with a program that we called Act One in Hollywood to train Christians who wanted to work in the mainstream culture. And so as anyone else who works with artists, kind of shepherding them, at any given time, you are mentor, friend, psychologist, mother, policeman, sometimes CSI investigator, pastor, teacher, but hopefully always alter Christus in the sense of being an other Christ who intercedes for them to the Father. I love artists. I love creative people. They make me crazy, but they're never boring. And I get bored very easily. They do get boring when they're on something. It's the boredom of like an 18-wheeler that's stuck in the sand, and it's just grinding over and over and over, and that can go on for 3 months if they're on this thing, But at least in that, they're still alive. And you have the sense when you're around them that you are around people who are definitely living life to the fullest. And even in their despair, it's gritty and real and passionate. And so I love artists, and I encourage those of you, two kinds of people in the world: people who are artists and people who are supposed to support them. So figure out which you are and do it with vigor. Okay? Honestly, every time I've noticed, I've done this whole thing about genius and artistic geniuses, and it's amazing to me how when God sends a gift of genius, he usually sends at least one person who gets that genius. And genius is always remarkable for being like everybody else is freaked out by it. But then there's somebody that's been sent to say, this is amazing. You know, it's like Theo with Van Gogh, or Susan Gilbert with Emily Dickinson. And you can see these over and over, that somebody was given this gift to save this artist for the rest of us. So that might be you. And I encourage you then to take that vocation seriously. Usually I start out by all the things I'm not going to talk about, and one of them was I wasn't going to talk about my book, which is out there, which I'm happy to sign, and I talked Baker into ordering some more because I said they'll want it after I talk. So they got them. So please, you know, for my self-esteem and for my relationship with my publisher, please, you know. And also, I'm not going to talk about Act One, but it is there for those of you who are thinking of making a start in Hollywood, either as writers or executives. And the website is actoneprogram.com, and I encourage you to check it out for yourself, for your children, for anyone you know who might be talented, who could throw their hat in the ring with us. Okay. All right. What am I going to talk about? I think the problem that we are kind of the subtext of this meeting has been that, okay, it's real hip now to support the arts and church. Everybody is kind of on board with that, especially everybody here, but pretty much everywhere. Everybody, you know, I know in LA, a lot of the churches are, you know, arts ministries now and drama ministries and all this stuff. Well, the problem is, as it seems to me, that we aren't really sure, though, who is an artist in the sense of someone who we want to support for the general edification of the body in the world, the body of Christ in the world. There's other people who are artists who we can support in that for their own catharsis. Like the art that they're doing is for them to be healed. And in that sense, I think we're all supposed to be artists. There's a book called Only the Lover Sings by a philosopher named Joseph Seifert, where he makes that case that modern world is so intrusive that we're losing the ability to see. There's so much coming at us that we're losing the ability to see the presence of God in the details. So we have to become artists because art makes you focus on the details. So whether that's gardening or cooking or whatever it is that you do, everyone has to bring forth beauty somehow. They have to exercise that creative facility to keep their life vibrant. But when I'm talking about it tonight, I'm talking about the other sense of artist, the sense of the person who's been called to be prophet and priest for the masses of us, to edify us in great numbers. They've been given powerful talent from God, that mystery of powerful talent, okay? So it seems to me that we need help to figure out who's who, because every pastor now is freaked out about what to do with anyone who walks up to them and says, I'm an artist, give me money. You're not going to shut me down now, are you? Right? And money, time, microphone, whatever it is. How do we know how we're supposed to respond to that? And then secondly, but before doing that, I'm going to lay out a few ideas about the beautiful, because this is the terrain of artists, the beautiful. And one way to recognize them is that they dwell in this terrain. So I want to say a little bit about what I mean by the beautiful. And then at the end, I'm going to do this thing that I call the cross of the artist. Hopefully that will help those of us who are artists understand what it is that how we're going to be called to holiness, how our work is going to sanctify us, and then those of us who minister to us will know better how to minister to us because of the cross that we're being called to carry, okay? And then hopefully at the very end, I'm going to read part of this Christians in Media Prayer for Forgiveness that Eric Lokesmo mentioned yesterday, but they made 300 copies. I asked for 20. That is the amazing hospitable spirit of this church and the people here that are doing this conference. And but anyway, if more, now you all have to take one. Otherwise, I will feel very bad. So, okay, all right. So let's plunge in about the beautiful. Okay, so artist's terrain is the beautiful. The Polish philosopher, artist, he was poet and actor, Karol Wojtyła, who had another name, right? He spoke about the call of some of us to pursue, on behalf of the rest, what he called new epiphanies of beauty. Oh, his other name was John Paul II, for those of you who aren't there. But I love that he was a poet and an actor, and he really almost went the acting route. But then the Nazis walked into Poland, and he was like, I'm going to be a priest. But he wrote tons of poetry and plays, not very good, but I just love that he tried. But he wrote this pursuit of new epiphanies of beauty, and this word epiphany meaning revelations, new revelations of the beautiful, that's what the artists do. What are we talking about here? Aristotle, and then it gives this definition that I'm going to just lay out, and I'm going to come back to it a few times. The beautiful is wholeness, harmony, and radiance. These are the elements of the beautiful when we're talking about the terrain of the artists. Wholeness, harmony, and radiance. Wholeness means nothing's missing. That all of the parts are present. It suggests completeness. No one looks at the Pietà and goes, yeah, she needs just a little more fringe around her veil. Yeah, oh well. They don't listen to Mozart's Ave Verum and go, needs another G. Oh, well. There's something about these works that they suggest completeness. Now, what do we get from completeness? We are made for the one. We were made to cleave to the one, to be, cleave to the one. So when we experience completeness, we have a sense of being at home. Like we can rest. So the beautiful gives you a sense of I can rest. Number 2, harmony. What is harmony? It means all of those parts, which are all present, are related to one another in a relationship of complementarity, not domination. So every part brings out the best in all of the other parts. They perfectly complement. Now, what do we get when we experience harmony? We get a sense of joy because we were called to be in community. We were made by a triune God who lives in community, and we were called for community. And this is our destiny to be in perfect community. So we get this sense of joy. We can do it. We can dwell together as one without being crushed. So the beautiful makes you feel rest, and it makes you feel joy. And finally, radiance, that something is communicated, something profound, and often beyond language. When you counter the beautiful, think about a sunset. When you see a sunset, you experience it calling to you personally. When you experience some of those pictures out in the hall, suddenly you're standing in front of one of them and it's personal. Like you yourself are being called personally, and you think of the artist, and you want to meet the artist because he said something to you or she said something to you personally. So, but the radiance, the communication of I know something and I'm sharing it with you, fulfills in us this desire. We were made as a kind of being that was made to know, to learn. And so we experience this, we feel fulfilled in our nature. So joy, oneness, rest, and fulfillment. This is what we get from the beautiful. This other theologian, German theologian, Ratzinger, wrote an essay called, also having another name, wrote an essay called Beauty in the Face of Christ. His other name is Benedict XV, right? He notes that the word beauty comes from the Greek word kalen, meaning call, and that you've encountered the beautiful when you've experienced the sense of it. Now, and he has another point where he says that the beautiful makes you feel small, humble, and yet happy. Think of it. I'm standing in front of, think of a beautiful vista, and you go, oh, how big in majesty is the cosmos. How small am I? Look at the beauty of it. So you feel small, but you know what? Okay with it. And he says this actually resolves the problem of the garden, where Satan's temptation was, you will be like gods, not creatures, gods. And that is the perennial temptation for us. I want to be like God. I want no limits. Then you experience the beautiful and you're like, I'm small and it's okay. Isn't that wonderful? He makes a further point that as people become less agrarian, as the society becomes less agrarian, see, people used to experience this. My Sicilian ancestors at the base of Mount Etna would stomp the grapes and see the ocean and, oh, isn't it beautiful? Right? The smells and the textures and the mountains and how beautiful, providing Mother Etna was cooperating that year, right? But they experienced God in this unmediated creation. Ratzinger says, as we become less agrarian, the only place people are going to experience the beautiful is where? Art. Hence, it puts a burden on us as a church to produce works that will give them this ability to be okay with their creatureness. Okay, now I just want to state unequivocally what the beautiful is not, just in case you're not clear. I told you what it is: wholeness, harmony, radiance. Here's what it's not. You can quote me. It's not cute. It's not easy. It's not banal. It's not silly. The beautiful is not sweet. It's not facile. It's not non-threatening. Precious moments may be soothing some kind of deep-seated psychic loss of childhood in people whose parents weren't there for them, or for whom there is a need to over-sentimentalize and extend into adulthood the innocence of childhood. But that just means that precious moments belongs in a therapist's lobby. Not in the church. Could there be anything as horrifically unharmonious as the precious moments crucifix? Now, the church has gotten into trouble with this whole, a little bit in the 20th century, I think, by reaching for other ends to art than this simple goal of seeking new epiphanies of beauty. Like, what is art for? It's a natural response to the cosmos. We're creatures, we get our hearts swelling, and we make stuff to say, we don't know how to say thank you. Stuff. All right? And every generation is called forth to do this, and the stuff they make is a witness to the world that God is good and real, and it's a sign to people, and that's, when you look at the cathedrals in Europe, for example, it's an absolute. I remember bringing one friend there from Hollywood, and she had just become a Christian, and we walked into the front of St. Peter's, and it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the rays were coming down. And it's just stunning at any time of day, but this time of day, it was overwhelming. And I'm walking up the top, I've been there several times. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of cool, all right. And all of a sudden, I realized she wasn't next to me. She was standing in the doorway crying. And she said, she's a Hollywood screenwriter. She said, I'm never going to argue with anyone else about Christianity till they've been here. There was something about the beauty of the place that for her was a proof. So there's that. Now, and yet, in the 20th century, we've lost this whole problem we've been talking about the last couple days about utilitarianism. We made the arts have to serve here's Satan. Go away. All right, good. We made the arts, there's no self-glory in that, I know. It's Satan. It's not a fly. All right. Okay. We made the arts have to do something else. We've lost the value. And instead of just being enough that they be beautiful, that we tell artists you strive for the beautiful, we have to make them other things. So the first one is political, where we've made art, the purpose of art, political. Now, I'm not necessarily meaning left or right here, but I mean statement making. This is different from the radiance. Statement making is, the goal is not to share radiance, but to manipulate, to coerce, to get people to vote a certain way, to propagandize, to change behavior. We have this awful statue in the new Cathedral of Los Angeles, which cost $200 million to build, the cathedral, and it's just dreadful. But the statue they have at the front is an image of Mary, and she's standing there like this. My students call her Man Hands Mary, because she has male hands. She has basically a female's torso. She has black lips. She has Asian eyes, a Mexican face, and she's androgynous. You don't know she's a woman really. She has her hair tied up in a little knot at the back. And when I first went on a tour, the tour guide said, this statue was conceived so that people of all races would see themselves in this statue and feel welcome in this place. And I said, I know. But it's kind of ugly. Now, I don't know about you, but if you saw that kind of freak inviting you into its house, but when I said it's kind of ugly, the tour guide sniffed at me and waved her hand and said, the church is not about that anymore. What the church was about was, we want a statue to be political. Now, could they have done an all races Mary? But I just want it beautiful. Proportion, harmony, wholeness, radiance. But the main agenda of this statue was politics. That was what it had to serve. Okay, number two. But anyway, what happens in politics is you lose wholeness, because politics only tells one side of the story. So you lose wholeness, you lose beauty. And the people lose that feeling of rest. Okay, number two, we've also made the arts a tool of what I call egalitarianism, in which we now consider the arts something that are about making the people in the church feel good about themselves. It has an interesting ratio. In proportion that it makes the people who perform feel good about themselves, it flays the sensibilities of the 1,000 others who have to listen. But what we've done here is say, you know what? Doris and Stan have good hearts. And they love the Lord, and they wrote a song. So we let Doris and Stan sing. But they don't have any voices. They have terrible voices. But we're not doing it about the beauty of the music. It's to make Doris and Stan feel good. There are other ways to make Doris and Stan feel good. I don't think we can sacrifice the arts to that agenda of making people feel good. And as I said, it may be Doris and Stan feel great, but I know how I feel sitting there. When we do this, we lose harmony, because the relationship of the parts in the piece is now not about perfection, but about suppressing some parts' perfection so that we can have a safe sameness. We lose harmony. Number three, the third thing that we use to do with the arts is we've turned them into, in many cases, what I call a soothing distraction. What we can also call sacred music. In the church, right? Elevator, the stuff they play on elevators to keep the people calm. We use the arts a lot in the church to lull the people. We can't let them have silence during the collection. They might get restless. So we got to fill it up. Put something on that wall. We only have $40. Well, throw some paint on it. Put some wooden slats. We've really been about this, let's just fill up the space. Now, when we do this, we suppress the prophetic voice of the arts. Are you waving at me? And did I do something wrong? Oh, no, sorry. I thought you were saying, sorry, am I talking too loud? Okay, sorry. Self-absorption. Sorry about that. Back to you. All right. The prophetic voice in the arts is the thing that gets people riled up in a good way. When you really encounter the beautiful, the call of it riles you up. But if we're using the arts to lull people, then we don't want them riled up, do we? We want them to be easy to manage. So a lot of the stuff we're doing is just about that, distraction, elevator music. So those are the three ways we kill the beautiful in the church: for politics, for egalitarianism, and for distraction. All right, let's talk about artists now. These are people who the beautiful is their terrain. So they're going to be people obsessed with wholeness, harmony, and radiance. John Paul II talks about this priesthood of the artist thing, in which he says the artist stands at the head of the people like a priest to offer on their behalf a prayer response to the cosmos. That thing I said about our job every generation is to make a response and leave it for the next generation and the generations to come. Well, the artists, these artists that I'm talking about, they're the ones who execute that. And it's a priesthood because they're going to stand at the head of us. We're going to feed them and support them and train them and then put them up there. And then they are going to produce a prayer that takes the form of a making, not a speaking. A priest is also the one who offers sacrifice. Now, in the case of the artists, this is in their own bodies and in their own minds and spirits. The demands of beauty is the phrase that the Pope uses. And he says, the paradox is that as the demands of beauty weigh on the artist, and the artist has to make sacrifices to be able to meet those demands, they become uglier as their work becomes more beautiful. I'm going to return to that. But that in some way, the more dedicated you become to your art, the more weird and uglified you get in some aspects so that you can produce the beautiful. And this is why you need a family, as was said in the first day, because only a family will put up with that. So this idea of offering the sacrifice in their own bodies and minds and spirits. The third priestly role of the artist is to be a prophet, a prophetic voice among the people, speaking back from God. So they make a response to God from us, and then God speaks back. It's like the artist becomes God's reed. But of course, you know the reed is useless unless it has holes punched in it. And that the voice of God, the breath of God, is too much for the human vessel. And so it stretches. The person has to be stretched and punctured and pulled and misshapen so that they can become a vessel of revelation for the rest of us. Okay. How do you recognize artists? Let's get there now. I'm going to give you a few thoughts on this. Artistic talent shows up early. This is my experience. I'm very leery of 28-year-olds who come to me and say, I think I'm going to be a writer. I always want to say back to them, and I think I'm going to have an IQ of 237. Or I'm going to eat cheesecake and not gain weight. It's not about you deciding what talent you have. You either have it or you don't. Now, I do believe it shows up early. I was in my little nephew's 7-year-old second grade class, Christmas time, and looking up on the wall, it was immediately obvious to me which little second graders had talent. Because some of the things looked like blobs, and some looked like reindeers. And I'm telling you, not only did some look like reindeers, but the kids had put the reindeer in a little bit turned setting. They were already playing with composition. And I said to my little nephew and his two friends, Matt and Alan, who are the best artists in your class? He's like, Joey. Joey can draw. Now, don't you wish we could do that in a church? It's kind of self-evident truth. Little John knows who can sing and who can draw and who's good at math. I mean, they know. It shows up early. So one of the things I would say to you, if you want to be a patron of the arts, go to your local grammar school, go into the second grade, find whoever did the identifiable cool thing, and then patronize that kid. I'm serious. And in 20 years, they'll be great. You just have to deal with their parents, you know. But you know what? Most parents will be on board if, it's like, hey, a babysitter. He wants to give our kid music lessons. Cool. All right. So, the next thing I would say is, and this was what got me into trouble yesterday, but I thought it through now, Jeremy. An artist's work has emotional power. And I'm going to stay by this. Here's what I think. Even if it takes time, because we don't know anything about art anymore, and when you're talking about the fine arts, most of us are completely ignorant of what's good painting, what's good music, when you're talking about the fine arts. But when my sister, the opera singer, I remember one day coming into the house, and I had said, I hate opera in my family. We're all barbarians, but my little sister is an opera singer, and that's the cross of her life, that her family never wants to go to anything that she does. And we go because of, all right, Valerie, I'll go to Charon, whatever it is. She's like, Tarantula, right? But we go. Under duress. And we leave after she's gone off the stage, whatever. But one day, to impress her, I had bought a Cecilia Bartoli. I'd heard this Cecilia Bartoli on some channel. She was on the Today Show or something. So I bought a CD, and I had it in my house. And I was really to impress my sister to say, look, Valerie, I'm listening to Cecilia Bartoli. Okay? Now, I left her in the living room. When I came back, like 5 minutes later, my sister, the mezzo-soprano, was on the floor on the carpet, listening to the mezzo-soprano Cecilia Bartoli. Now, I had listened to that CD a few times, but I had never been reduced to being on the floor. She heard something that moved her so much, her legs went out from under her. So that's what I mean by emotional power. Now, in that area, she educated me. I knew there was something there because I had reached for it. But beyond that, when you hear a writer who makes you laugh, or someone who makes you cry, someone touches your heart and they make you feel alive, they make you feel human, they make you feel rest, joy, and depth, and that you've been called. This is the emotional power that I'm talking about. And when talking about church art, if somebody's either got it or not. And we see very often young artists who, like we'll say when we evaluate them for Act 1, there's no magic here. Young writers. Or you get somebody whose spelling is bad, they're using the wrong format, they didn't do the assignment right, and they sent us a protest letter arguing that they shouldn't have had to fill out an application. And then we read their sample and we cry. And it's like, rats, we have to accept this one. She can write. There's something there. This emotional power is a sign. Okay, the next one is, as I said, an artist's work connects you to the person of the artist and immediately becomes personal with you and them. This is why we worship artists as a culture. You hear a singer who touches you, and then suddenly people want to touch that person because it was for me, that song you wrote. You to me, and I know I'm not alone now, and you're so grateful. Okay, and the next thing is a real artist's work is going to have freshness, a prophetic quality as of something new. You go to classes, I took watercolor, and you could look at the whole line of paintings, and there's derivative, competent, derivative, competent. Wow. Fresh. And it feels different. It feels like they're doing something different. And I know I'm being vague here, but this is what I experience. We use this word freshness in Hollywood all the time, and it connotes a sense of prophecy. I'm hearing a word I haven't heard before just this way. I'm seeing a gift I haven't seen before. Okay. Here's another sign that you're an artist. You are obsessed with details of form. It is a God-given preoccupation that marks the sacred gift. Artists are obsessed with matters of brushstroke and canvas size and color and the relationship of space to objects. Poets worry about meter and meaning in their selection of words. They want to know about capturing shadows on film and the minute implications on emotion of adjusting a camera lens, right? It's minute. I remember seeing Emma Thompson's Academy Award-winning performance in Howard's End. And there was one moment in the scene where it was an awkward moment, and her character, Margaret Schlegel, it was just such a beautiful, beautiful character from the novel, and she recreated it so perfectly. But there was one scene where one of the characters was getting embarrassed, belittled. And they did a close-up on Emma Thompson, and she made the muscle in her throat tense. That's all she did. And I'm like, Academy Award. And she got it. But it was this tiny little movement that said it, the compassion of this person, that she was feeling the empathy for this person who was being shamed. That kind of detail is where real artists tend to dwell. Poe wrote, "To write a good sonnet, you usually have to have climbed over the bones of your 14 apprentice sonnets, each good line putting paid to the ghost of a failed poem." That kind of detail of writing it over 14 times, that is a mark of an artist. Yeats says, is it Yeats or Yeats, Jeremy? Yeats, thank you. You know, I've read the entire autobiography and I felt that I didn't know how to say the guy's name. But he's known to me as the other British writer who is there we go, right? Who is alive during, you had George Bernard Shaw and you had Oscar Wilde, and then this poor guy, Yeats. We don't even know how to say his name anymore, right? But his autobiography is beautiful, and I've been reading it for this talk. But he says, "Does not all art come when a nature that never ceases to self-criticize," now I'm paraphrasing a little bit, "moves into a trance from the self-criticism, and then has a moment that is like between waking and sleeping, that takes over, and suddenly they make something." But it's, in other words, that they've been self-criticizing so much by being so focused on these details, and then finally something takes over, and it's almost like a trance. Most people that I know that tell me they want to be writers or actors or anything, they don't get there. They're just not that focused. Self-criticism. Okay, here's another couple of questions about artists for those of you trying to recognize them. Are artists, in fact, crazy? Okay, I think it's the wrong way to think. I know we've all made a lot of jokes at artists' expense here. But the question is out there. Are these people crazy? Because sometimes they take advantage of the fact that we think they are, to like wear pajamas for 3 days in a row. Right? I've done that. Do I have water anywhere? Sorry. Thank you. Excuse me. Reflection. There we go. Thank you. Okay. So are they crazy? See, I think we need to think of it this way. Emily Dickinson said, it's not that the poet sees weird things, it's that other people don't see what's really there. Now, I love that, and I think that a way to look at it would be this. Are there angels in this room? Are there? Are the angels present here? How about the spirits of the saints? The saints present here. I mean, I know we're getting into whatever, but here, let me give you another one. Are there demons in this room? Are some of you walking around with demons like serpents wrapped around your shoulders and hissing in your ear? Are they really here? Supposing some of you could see them, because they're really here. They really are here. Now, some of you can see it. And one of you walks by someone who has a demon wrapped like a serpent around their shoulders, licking their ear, and you go up to that person and say, "Hey, how you doing?" And the person goes, "How am I doing? How am I doing?" Now, who's the weird one here? The person standing next to the serpent without any recognition? I think that's how it is. I think that artists genuinely perceive spiritual realities, and then they open up their mouth and they say metaphor. Because they don't know how else to get it through to us who are so obtuse. Here's a great, from the great biography of Edgar Allan Poe by Daniel Hoffman, and it's truly one of the great literary biographies. It's called Poe, very clever title there. But he writes of Poe that Poe was a marked man, one of the chosen, alienated because of the specialness of his own nature, chosen to enjoy what others can't even sense, chosen to suffer what others can't even see, to love those whom he loved in an isolation as complete as that in which he feels his joy and his suffering. He goes on to say, Edgar Allan Poe was sane and insane, but sane mostly when he was writing his poems, his tales, and his criticism. Artists are extremely sane when they're working on their work. These people can be crazy about the details of their work, completely unable to mail back their auto insurance. But honestly, if you only have 24 hours in a day, what's more important? Okay, this is another great line from Yeats, and he writes, "When I was in my 22nd year," this is on the craziness of the artist thing, "I had finished the Wanderings of a Sheen," I'm saying that wrong, "my style seemed to me too elaborate, too ornamental, and I thought for some weeks of sleeping on a board. And if I wasn't afraid of my grandfather and grandmother, I would have made the attempt." That's the craziness of the artist. I have 5 minutes? Wow, okay. Is it crazy? I know. You know what, we started late. Yeah. I know. Thank you, sorry. So, is that crazy? I mean, it's weird to sleep on a board so that your writing wouldn't be elaborate and ornamental. And that's the kind of thing that you would say, my nephew's insane. But is he? Then the next one is, are artists lazy? This is another one. I think that they have the reputation of being lazy because they dread their work because it's so hard. It's very, very hard. And I'm going to say, hopefully I'm going to run through those, what I'm talking about. They also get bored once they've figured out what they have to do. And then it's like, I'm actually going to have to do it now? You know, it's like the problem is solved and they've moved on. And then I think the other thing, the reason they look lazy to us is that the process of art is often under the surface. So I don't look like it, but right now I'm trying to solve a first act dilemma in a screenplay that I'm writing. I've been working on it for 3 months. I need to find a choice for a Carmelite nun to do that would show at the end of the first act that she lost her faith. And I can't have her throw a crucifix into the fire because they already did that in Amadeus. But that moment that I'm trying to find, that choice, is obsessing me. I'm living with it for 3 months. And so it's like, am I lazy? Because I'm not getting much results? No, it's just hard. Okay. All right. Last part here I'm going to go through is this cross of the artist part here. And I got the idea for this, and I'm going to do this in 10 minutes, I promise. Is it okay? Yeah, 10 minutes. Okay, I promise. I won't go through the whole thing, but I'm going to give you the idea. Once I was getting my teeth done, and the dentist was about to dive in. And you know, I'm a writer, so it's like I'm not going to waste 40 minutes sitting in a chair and not learn something. So I asked the dentist a question right when he's diving in. Do you like being a dentist? And so he stops and he goes, do I like being a dentist? So he starts doing his thing, and then all of a sudden he says, you know, I wish somebody would have told me in dental school that for the rest of my life, 8 hours a day, I'm going to have people spit in my face. Now, I thought that was remarkable. Can you imagine getting through pre-med and dental school and the idea of saliva never crossed your mind? But I experience the same thing with artists who come to me all the time with things that are just part of the territory of the cross of the artist. They experience them as, this is a sign from God, I'm not supposed to be an artist. And I'm saying, no, it's just a sign you're doing it. So here are some of those things that just come with the territory. And the first one I hear most of the time, and those of you who are artists, see if this is where you're at. And know that if you're going through this, you're not doing it wrong, you're just doing it. The first one is, I'm lonely. Isolation. Isolation. You have to be by yourself. You have to sit in the dark, you have to sit in the quiet to memorize lines if you're an actor, to come up with story if you're a writer, to sit there and get that picture in your head if you're a visual artist. You have to be alone in the quiet. Now, what do you have in the aloneness? Loneliness, depression, moroseness, social ineptitude. This one thing I hear from them all the time, nobody gets me. Another one is sloth. We used to say in the convent all the time, you don't know who you are until you're alone. You want to know where you're at? How do you act when you're alone? So artists, we make them be alone. And so they get lazy, slothful. Those are the dark things that can happen to them. In the isolation, the good things is it's silence. Most of us are living these crazy, noisy lives. To make a living, an artist has to be quiet and move into solitude, which is they can meet God. God can get a voice in. It also promotes thoughtfulness and depth, doesn't it? They have to sit in the silence and the quiet, and they have to brood. This can make them deep people. Plato says the unexamined life is not worth living. Well, then the artist's life is very, very worth living. Because all they do is examine. And the other thing it promotes is humility. Because you have a sense in the darkness of where is this coming from? Please, my Act 1 choice. I got nothing. Right? It's a sense of humility and emptiness. And the need for God to inspire you. All the people in Hollywood who are artists are spiritual people. All of them. Because they know when they make something beautiful that they had no idea where it came from. So what I would say to you is when you experience this, don't run. Embrace it as your cross. Because insofar as you embrace that suffering of loneliness, of isolation, you become holy. And number two, and then I'm just going to do number two, and then we'll stop and we'll do, I don't know what else they want to do here, questions or whatever. The next one is rejection. Rejection. Most of our work, it will be unappreciated. Actors at auditions, what a grueling, grueling thing to behold. I've produced 5 shows, and it's agony to watch these actors come up and do everything. Anything, please, please, like me. Give me this job. It's agony to behold. And then we're like, no, we need a blonde. Next. I have a friend who's an agent, and she's a Christian, and she said to me once in despair, Barbara, I deal in human flesh. That's what she does, you know? Rejection, it's painful. You put yourself out there, you pour yourself into something. It's the best you've got, and people walk by and yawn. They miss it. They think it's dumb. They reject it because they don't like you. This factor of rejection, artists experience more rejection in a month than most people do in a decade. And how do you feel when you're rejected? Bruised, desperate, bitter, hurt, withdrawn. Now do you understand why so many artists drink? Why do you think they drink? Because it's the only way to dull the pain. They're in pain. It's just so hard. The good side, rejection teaches you to value who you are, not for what you can do. My value is not in this thing I can do. It's in who I am. It also makes you draw close to the one who was despised and rejected of men. When you see the crucified or the suffering Christ in his passion, suddenly, this is somebody, I get that. I get that. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jesus, right? And then finally, humility, again. Humility. I am fundamentally absurd. I'm a vessel. God is blowing through me, and it's about him and his people. The work that I do, I'm available, I'm showing up. I'm not a genius, I'm not great, there's nothing coming from me. And I think that as you experience rejection, that is the positive side, that you realize it's not personal. The others are instability, entrepreneurism, having to sell yourself, having to collaborate with people, and then finally success. These are the crosses that are part of the artist's life, and all of them bring with it, just terrible suffering. And yet at the same time, the possibility of amazing growth and grace and depth. And so what I would say to you, when you feel these things tearing you apart, don't quit. That's your holiness, staring you in the face. And insofar as you embrace it, and then go to your work and pour that into your work, you will be holy. You not only be a good artist, but you be a saint. And I'm not going to read my prayer, but I would say, please take a copy of it. It's a prayer I wrote called Prayer for Forgiveness, asking on behalf of the church, we're apologizing to the world for letting them down in the area of art and media. And I wrote it a few years ago and got copies for everybody here. Thank you very much. Yeah.
We're going to have 9 minutes of questions, 2 microphones. I'm going to just say you got to be absolutely brief in your question.
Because I won't be in my answers.
Because she won't be in her answers. Yeah. And can I have maybe 6 people from the doors come and get these prayers and put them by the doors so we don't all choke here?
Please take them. They're really good.
Don't come up here and get them. Don't come up and just get your own. Take them to the doors. Thank you, Scott. I see that. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. nobody else. Now, here's the other thing. If you have asked a question in a plenary, please give space to someone else. Is that okay? Is that fair? Barbara, I'll start it off.
Okay.
Have you ever been disciplined by your own church?
Have I ever been disciplined by my own church? Well, I mean, I had recently this movie, Bella, that I said was mediocre, and the Catholics had decided that it was the greatest Catholic pro-life movie ever made. It was basically a movement, not a movie. And I said, it's a first-time effort by some people, a couple of whom have talent. Hopefully they'll make more. Waste of $4 million, though, should have cost them $1 million. I got nailed for not being pro-life, for not being a good Christian, for not being a good Catholic, for clearly having, there was one website that posted that I was taking bribes from Hollywood. If only,
Okay, that's enough on
right.
Bella.
Anyway,
right.
so, it's the truth.
Yeah,
That's
right.
the only time. I mean, discipline, no. I was thrown out of the convent, but, but but that was more The Sound of Music. And that scene, when you're living it, Climb Every Mountain isn't as poignant, I gotta tell you.
Okay, question over here,
Yeah.
Scott. Give your name and where you're from.
Okay, my name is Clark Zombreaker, and I'm from Austin here. And I'm a songwriter for corporate worship use, and I really identified with the whole thing of being obsessive about the details. And so a part of me, I feel affirmed in that, but then another part of me, it's like, well, sometimes I get, what happens when you get stuck there and you have this song where it hasn't been finished and it's 2 years old, and it's all because there's just one word that you're just not sure you like the texture, the way it sounds.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, and then you're like, well, I just need to eeny, meeny, miny, mo, pick that one, and then it works. You know what I mean?
I think that that sometimes you do have to have, this is another reason you need family as an artist, because your family can say to you, you know what, it's good. And sometimes we need to have our work pulled out of our hands, because we really are, you can become a perfectionist about it. And sometimes it's just not there yet, and we know that. Emily Dickinson rewrote some poems over periods of 18 years. And the final versions, there's a 3-volume set of her final poetry where they'll have 7 versions because they don't know which was the one she thought was the best. And they're like, you know what? We found 7 copies of this poem with this change. So I think that's also a quality of an artist, that in that refusal to settle, and this, John Paul II calls it the suffering of insufficiency, where the artist's work is never as good as the vision they had in their head, and that's another reason we drink. It's so humiliating, So, but I think, at a certain point, find some people who know their stuff, and whose opinion you trust, and they can say to you, it's good. And then you're going to have to trust them.
And use that John Paul II quote with your community. That'll be good. That'll work. Yeah, a quick question.
He didn't say that's why we drink. I added that. Right? Yeah, I know.
My name's Dan McGregor. I'm from Columbia, South Carolina. I looked down this list of what the cross of the artist: isolation, rejection, stability, success. Mm-hmm. Going on what Eugene Peterson had said, it sounds a lot like the life of a pastor as well.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I just wondered if you had any thoughts.
No, I think that's beautiful. But doesn't that go with my thing about, the Pope's thing about the artist is priest? Yeah, I think you're right. I think instability, that's absolutely, and rejection, and having to sell yourself, especially if you're a Protestant. Yeah. I'm amazed what you put your guys through. In Catholic Church, we just a priest dies, they just get a new one from somewhere. I don't know. No one ever asks us what we think. But no, I think that that process of it's very similar. Great, that's a beautiful observation. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
My name is Jimmy Pribble. I'm from Austin, and was wondering if you think, or how you think, truth might fit into Aristotle's 3 components of beauty. I know personally, when I find something beautiful, or more often when I find something not beautiful, more often than not, I find that there's a component of untruthfulness about it, and that's what I identify. Does it fit in his somewhere within those,
I
or is
think-
it another component?
I think in two places. One, well, actually all three, frankly, because truth would be something's missing in the wholeness. If it's not true, something's missing. In the harmony, something here is just not right, right? Something is being overshadowed. And in the radiance is about communication. So it's like the thing that's being radiated is not being there's nothing being radiated here. And it's because it's a lie. And I say that all the time in Hollywood. When they make a movie, you cannot sell a lie. You know, try really hard to make Cider House Rules beautiful, but it was a lie. It was a lie. And you just can't sell it. The people won't eat it.
Okay.
My name's Howard Reed, and I'm a pastor at a Presbyterian church in Houston, and I can be bought for $4,200.
You're on.
Well, you're even worse than artists.
Would
I
you,
thought we were
would you
cheap.
tell us, is Mel Gibson a religious artist?
He's a very religious man, unconventionally so. You know, he's a very religious man. He's really a loose cannon. And in the sense of, I think he's tortured and he's tormented. Not to throw the thing around, but, I was there for the rough cut of The Passion in his office, and there was like 5 of us there. And he said, I made this movie as an act of repentance for my own sins. And as bad as the violence is in the movie, it doesn't come close to how bad one of my sins is. He also said he made that movie to be the Stations of the Cross in his art form. So if you know the Catholic devotion, the Stations of the Cross, it's 14 moments. So that's why there isn't a lot of the stuff it wasn't a normal story. It was the Stations of the Cross. But yeah, he said that. So is he religious? I think definitely. I think he's absolutely, struggles with God, and and it's very sincere and real. He has the interesting quality a lot of Christians do, especially in Hollywood, of that's separate from all the other artistic choices that I make. And or your business choices. Like, this is business. And then, I'm this guy. But I know he's not here to defend himself, and I do think a lot of him. But I think that it's kind of a general confusion that happens in Hollywood with Christians, where they kind of compartmentalize their Christianity because the world outside is just so antithetical. So,
Barbara, thank you.
thanks, everybody. God bless. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.